This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV. It's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Hey, Fidelity. What's it cost to invest with the Fidelity app?
Start with as little as $1 with no account fees or trade commissions on U.S. stocks and ETFs.
That's music to my ears.
I can only talk.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Zero account fees apply to retail brokerage accounts only. Sell order assessment fee not included. A limited number of ETFs are subject to a transaction-based service fee of $100. See full list at fidelity.com/commissions. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
You're listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast, episode 257, looking back at the Disney afternoon. Welcome to the Animation Addicts Podcast with the Rotoscopers, the #1 place to get your animation fix with animation addicts just like you. Each episode, we dive into the wonderful world of animation featuring Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar, and everything in between. From hilarious discussions and movie reviews to interviews with industry insiders, this show's mission is to brighten your day through our love of animation. So hop on your nerdy couch, grab some snacks, and get ready to hang out with your animation besties because it's time to dive into today's episode. Hey there, animation addicts. I'm your host, Chelsea Robson.
And I'm Morgan Stradling. Chelsea, I'm putting you on the spot. Can you sing the theme song to the Disney afternoon?
The Disney afternoon.
That's the end of it. Let's play it.
Oh, here it comes. Those drums, those bells, man.
Step right up and come on in. Here's where the fun begins. There's so much to do. Get it ready just for you. Everybody's busy bringing you a Disney afternoon. Hey, can you feel the buzz? Well, you're gonna feel the buzz because everybody's busy. Just a little busy. Bringing you a Disney afternoon.
All right, I'm not going to play all 2 minutes and 45 seconds of it. We'll include that at the end of the podcast. You can stick around for that. That is some good times. But that is what our episode is about today. We are talking all things Disney afternoon.
Here at the Almond Joy Factory, where tropical vibes abound, we use soft, fresh-tasting coconut.
The crunchiest almonds and delicious chocolate candy.
Ah, but do you know what our most important ingredient is? Sometimes you feel like a nut.
Sometimes you don't.
Almond Joy's got nuts and something even way better than that. Yes, Almond Joy is made with almonds and joy.
Lowe's knows what makes SpringFest savings even better are member-only doorbuster deals. Right now, rewards members can save $40 on an Allen & Roth Chesler Gold faucet. Was $99, now $59. Plus, save $110 on a Cobalt 40-volt battery trimmer and blower combo kit. Was $279, now $169. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 3/24 while supplies last. Program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
Good night, itchy eyes. Good night, sudden sneeze. Good night to your symptoms of allergies. Zysol is the allergy medicine you take before bed. It provides powerful relief while you rest your head. Not just all night, but all the next day. Zysol keeps working, keeping allergies at bay. And without those annoying symptoms disturbing your rest, you can wake up the next morning feeling your absolute best. Remember, be wise all. Take Zysol at night.
So, Chelsea, we are actually going to be reviewing in our next episode Chippendale Rescue Rangers, which is the new Disney Plus movie, or reboot, if you will, of Chippendale Rescue Rangers, right?
Yes.
And if you don't know what that is or what it's a reboot from, you might be a little lost. I'm sure you'll enjoy the movie perfectly fine, but I thought we would take a stroll through time back to the early 90s and back to our childhood. And this was something
It's the best
magical.
place to begin.
It was something beautiful. It was something amazing. Everyone knew what this was. Also, it had a catchy theme song while it was at it.
It totally did.
This is the Disney Afternoon. Now, I'm going to go into the little history of the Disney Afternoon. But before we do, when you hear Disney Afternoon, what do you think of? What feelings do you have?
I remember specifically being very mad that if my mom were ever late to pick me up, which, generally happened, I was mad because I was missing out on some of my favorite shows, Mom.
Yes.
I spent an entire 8 hours a day in this prison called school, and now all I really want to do is get home to the Disney Afternoon. That's all I want in life.
Yes, and it was titled very appropriately because this was an afternoon series. It was a 2-block hour where they would show specific Disney shows. There were 4 different 30-minute programs, and it typically fell that time right after school, right? And so if you had a dentist appointment or you were late or something, then you would miss out. And another thing, it's interesting. It's just so different now versus, the early 90s and syndication.
Right.
But with syndication, these series typically had 30, 40, 50 episodes in a season.
Yeah.
Now when you go on Netflix for, some of these kids shows, it's 10, maybe 15. It just depends. And it's like, really? Okay. We finished that in a day, but it just was a totally different world. So let's go back to the Disney Afternoon. Let's talk all about it, how it started. Now, of course, this was Eisner era.
Yes.
And I give him mad props for starting this. So he came around and he decided, hey, I wanted to move more into, animated television production.
Well, they just bought ABC, and they're like, okay, we've got time to fill.
Yes. Yeah, perfect. And, he was big on animation, and rightly so. He made he did so many things right during this era. Like when he first came in, he hit the ground running, so many hits, so many good things, took the studio in a totally different direction, the company in a different direction. And it was a hit. And so they decided they wanted to do this thing called the Disney Afternoon. They already had a few other shows that were all, there were some shows that were being pitched as what they wanted to include. There was a Mickey show. It was Mickey and the Space Pirates. But Eisner was like, no, we can't do that because Mickey Mouse, he's our man. He is the logo. He is the company symbol. So I want to make sure that we don't just space pirate him up, So that got turned down. And, he involved some people from feature animation and from the music department. One of those was Tad Stones, which put a pin in that name. I will talk about him in a little bit, but he pitched a variety of different things. He pitched a Rescuers TV series, but that also was kibosh because they were in production of making a sequel for the Rescuers. And ultimately, this Rescuers TV series was changed a little bit, included some other critters, and then the main character that they had wasn't working out, so they decided, hey, let's make it some sort of chipmunk character, and then eventually yada yada it turned to Chip and Dale, and there we go. So they were kind of making these other things. One of them was gummy bears, and the reason that Eisner wanted to make a series about the gummy bear, it's just the candy. He said, well, kids like candy, they really like gummy bears, and so
I remember that is that part in Disney War was really funny to me. Right. But I just remember reading Disney War and just almost forgetting that the Disney Afternoon was a thing to grown-ups.
Right.
A grown-up spent a lot of time making this and developing it, and all of for whatever reason, until that moment a couple of years ago, I was like, oh yeah, people had to actually I knew this, obviously, but the fact that it had spent so much time in the Disney War Eisner book, like the fact that Eisner was so involved in this era was really surprising to me, which it shouldn't have been, but it just, never really came up.
Mm-hmm. So, some of these movies or some of these shows they kicked off the Disney afternoon, but it wasn't quite called that at the time. DuckTales came out in 1987, but it wasn't until 2 years later when they brought Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers in that they officially, started calling it, the Disney afternoon. And so it took a while for them to say like, hey, these things, it wasn't like they came together and they said, hey, we're going to start this thing called the Disney afternoon. It's like, hey, what kind of shows can we make? And then eventually, as they started making more and more, they're like, hey, let's brand this. So this is a thing. So kids don't just want to watch one, they want to watch all of them. And that really did work because some of these phased out pretty quickly and they were replaced by other ones. So let's talk about the different shows in the Disney afternoon. I'm just going to go through the list from the years, and we'll just talk about each one of them, and then we're going to rank them or give our favorites, right? This was actually a nerdy couch discussion idea or suggestion from one of our patrons, Lauren. She wanted us to talk about the Disney afternoon and cartoons. She said, what is your favorite Disney animated TV series and why? Some of mine are Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Darkwing Duck, and Elena of Eleanor. So we kind of took this question and we morphed it to, let's talk about the Disney afternoon, especially with what's coming up with Chip 'n Dale. So first and foremost, The Adventures of Gummy Bears. That ran on the Disney afternoon from 1990 to 1991. So very short. Any thoughts on Gummy Bears? I personally never watched this show. Was not into it. I like the candy, was not into the show, just wasn't my jam.
So Gummy Bears is very interesting to me because I do remember seeing it a couple of times, but this was a time before they created like the afternoon part, or maybe just because it was always maybe earlier on in the block, I didn't see all of them, but I do specifically remember the show, and I do mostly remember the Gummy Bears theme song because of the good old Napster era. Randy, my brother, decided to go in and he downloaded all of the theme songs for all of the shows.
Nice.
And
that's my person.
Right. So this was, I mean, these were songs you just couldn't get, and so to be able to get them, and I totally remember, in that era going back into my mind, and the Gummy Bears theme song 100% lives rent free in my mind. 100%.
And I think one of the reasons maybe why, initially it wasn't part of this Disney afternoon, it started on NBC initially, then to move to ABC and the Disney afternoon. So some of these, including, DuckTales, they started before, right? So
this was also 90, and I was, not old enough to really get my way on the television.
Yes. You did have older brothers to contend with.
Yes, I did.
So moving on, one that is very iconic to me, at least, is DuckTales.
Yeah.
So DuckTales ran on the Disney afternoon from 1990 to 1992, but it actually started back in 1987. So,
oh, wow,
which is crazy because I remember very distinctly DuckTales being a part of my childhood.
Yeah.
And I think part of it were, the Disney afternoon, but also the VHS tapes that we had, where I would watch certain ones. And there are certain episodes that are just ingrained into my mind. Specifically, there's one where they go, I don't know if it's to another land or something, but there's these creatures underground that turn into balls and they like roll around and roll away. Very, 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 very hardcore memory right there.
Right. There's a funny thing about DuckTales is it actually, the themes in that one were really quite like pro-capitalism when you definitely don't see that nowadays.
When you got Scrooge McDuck, what else is there?
I know. What else are you going to talk about? But I mean, they do it in a way that really like explains like monetary theory, which is like, what?
That's hilarious.
I was very surprised going back and rewatching some of the episodes to find that. I was like, wow, okay. There you go. I really liked DuckTales, as I have talked about on our DuckTales, the Treasure of the Lost Lamp episode that we did. that was one that I often watched, but also this was more of a Randy show. So Randy's my older brother. So Randy definitely was into the show, and therefore I was also into the show. So, but
love it
on its own. I liked it.
So next up we have Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, ran from 1990 to 1993. And I remember this one. I remember watching this one, you know, I couldn't at this point in time tell you any specifics about any episode, although, you know, when we were watching, you know, getting ready for our next episode, there were certain characters and bad guys that instantly I'm like, oh, the cat bad guy and this person, you know what I mean? So, and of course, Jim Cummings.
Right.
But this was a great one. And really surprisingly that this was so popular at the time that in Toontown at Disneyland, there is a Chip 'n Dale Rescue Ranger sort of mini roller coaster for kids, which feels so dated now. But I'm like, well, hey, they brought it back, give it some extra life.
Chip 'n Dale Rescue Ranger, Chip 'n Dale. I want to give a huge shout out to all of the songwriters on the Disney Afternoon, because all of these, well, not all of them, but a bunch of these, especially during the beginning time, they definitely live rent free in my mind.
And I believe that the guy who did DuckTales and Chip 'n Dale is the same person. When I was researching ahead of time, I think he was just on tap for all of these theme songs, which is why they kind of have the same vibe. Yeah. They're all part of the same family, which is good. Yeah. So
very cohesive.
I like Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. Now, if I'm going to rank these, I think it's middle of the pack for me. Okay, so this next one is Tailspin. But from 96
I didn't get to sing the Tailspin song, because that one was a funny one, because it was like oh, like there was a lot of these O's in there, and I just remember Marissa and I always being like oh. Sorry. Okay.
I love it. So the interesting about a lot of these is, at least other than Gummy Bears, they're kind of spin-offs of existing properties, but in new, unique, fun ways. You know, DuckTales is the nephews, basically, of Scrooge McDuck, kind of their adventures. It mostly focuses on the nephews. And that Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers is a new way to have Chip 'n Dale, you know, previously have never really been the stars of anything, so they kind of are these detectives. Tailspin takes some of the characters from DuckTales.
Yeah.
And Jungle Book. Right. It's like a weird...
You have Baloo the bear.
Yes, we have Baloo.
You've got... Launchpad is in there. Yeah, it's a weird, like hodgepodge of these different characters, but I like it.
Yeah, totally loved it. 1990 to 1994. Next up is Darkwing Duck. This one was my jam.
Yes.
So good. Let's get dangerous. Ran from 1991 to 97. So Goof Troop, another one that I loved so much. This is about Goofy. Who doesn't love Goofy? And his son, Max, and their friends in their neighborhood, which is Pete. So good times there. That ran.
Pete has a wife.
He does have a wife, yes.
You know, it's like, so there's all these other characters that were very much, you knew who they were, and they were like, and Max in this one, his character really wasn't very developed. He was just kind of like the kid. Goofy really was the star. And it was a kind of a mix mash between Goofy and Pete. And because Pete is like an old character that they've kind of brought back and like threw him in to get this whole thing. So I liked it how, especially later on when they go ahead and create a Goofy movie. That one, as you know, we love ourselves a Goofy movie.
We love ourselves a Goofy movie. It is so good. Which this Goof Troop, we would not have a Goofy movie without the success of the Disney Afternoon and Goof Troop. So we really do owe a lot to the Disney Afternoon and Eisner. I mean, props where props is due.
Wait. I don't know if you said this on the podcast yet, but there's the one person that you said that somebody was walking around with like an Eisner shirt or something at Disney World.
Oh, yes. I was at Hollywood Studios and someone was wearing an Eisner shirt and I was like, you get it.
I need one of those, actually.
You know what?
Like,
the podcast will hook you up. We'll get you. Yeah.
Cool. We could do our ranking of all of the Disney heads.
Yes. Let's do that. Oh, good times. Okay, so now we're hitting Bonkers. Bonkers ran from 93 to 96.
Bonkers. Totally nuts.
And this is where some of these shows are starting to die off and they're being replaced.
Yes.
So DuckTales ended in 92, was replaced by Goof Troop, I believe, in 92. Bonkers, Chip and Dale ended in 93, so Bonkers kind of came around the scene. I'm not sure which one specifically, but it's kind of like this is the phase 2, probably phase 3, once we hit Bonkers.
Yeah.
Of the original ones dying out and being replaced with the new guys. Yeah, because Gummy Bears, DuckTales, and Rescue Rangers by 93, when this came around, were done.
Uh-huh.
So there we go. So Bonkers was interesting. It was this new character. He's this cheetah. I think he's a cop.
Yeah,
I remember liking it enough and watching it, but I've never gone back since.
Yeah, that one was an interesting
it's
show.
More like, oh yeah, that was a thing that was cool, but I'm like, eh.
Theme song was good. That one still is in my head. Bonkers, totally nuts. But really just that part of the song. But they had I remember him. I remember like he had a gang. You had a girl character. Yeah, but I don't remember much of anything else, except that there was a back and forth between Bonkers and Darkwing Duck. Mm-hmm. There were a couple episodes where they kind of joined forces, maybe, or at least did a like mashup kind of thing.
Yeah, we kind of just glossed over Darkwing Duck, but I really just loved him so much.
I love Darkwing Duck. There's so many good things about Darkwing. Launchpad really had his time.
He had a good agent. What can I say?
He had a great agent.
Okay, so next up is Aladdin, one of my absolute favorites of this. 94 to 97. And it just took, Aladdin was a huge hit in 92. And they had a series, and obviously the animation was nowhere near as great as the feature length, and that's fine. But they had Thundra, this character, and there was like the bad guy. He was like a young Aladdin sort of like guy. His name start with an M. Montague, or Mazenroth. Mazenroth. Or Mazenrath. I don't know. He's the main antagonist from 1994 to 1995. Okay. And yes, that is him.
Wow, he got a whole year.
Yeah. I mean, he was just always around. They couldn't thwart him. So that's Aladdin. So many good things there. It's interesting around this time, like I'm looking at this list, I'm like, wait, where's Little Mermaid? Little Mermaid was a thing, but that was one that
one only went to VHS.
It was on a different network. I think it was on CBS when I was looking it up.
Okay.
And for some reason, they just didn't put it on the Disney afternoon block. So,
I mean,
which is so interesting. Maybe they were jam-packed. They didn't have room. Yeah.
They got a good deal and somebody paid them already for the rights to it. I don't remember. I only ever saw like 2 episodes of that one. And it was only because we had the VHS of like a double episode of those.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing too many episodes of that. Like you said, it wasn't a part of this like must-see TV branded Disney afternoon thing. It was just on a different channel at different random times. And so I think it was harder to pin that down.
Which is interesting.
Have some good songs in there. There's some songs that we remember. Harmony.
Oh gosh. My favorite was when Mason pulled that out of his hat, just out of nowhere. Shout out to Mason.
Nice.
The fact that it was him and neither you or I,
which would have been expected, totally.
Yeah, it would have been. But it was like, whoa, that takes me back. Oh gosh,
we made a good choice in making you our third co-host.
We did.
Welcome to the club. Okay, so next up, this is for sure epitome Disney afternoon, Gargoyles.
Yes.
94 to 97. My friends, the Carpenters, I've talked about them. they lived across the street. I go to their house all the time, play Barbies with them all the time, watch Disney Afternoon with them all the time. But they had the Gargoyles toys. And I very much remember playing with all of the Gargoyles action figures because Gargoyles were cool.
Yeah, they were.
1,000 years ago, superstition and the sword ruled. It was a time of darkness. It was a world of fear. It was the age of gargoyles.
Well, because they needed more. They liked having the guy kind of characters. Because at the time you're doing a lot of princess movies, and so they're wanting to throw in these guy characters that are really engaging. But I think, as far as Gargoyles, something that they did really good with is they took what was happening with, say, Batman and Spider-Man, and they made a very comic book-esque storyline. And so you had character arcs that you could follow, and it was like 5-part episodes,
which was cool and different.
It was.
We were just used to this episodic, like every episode was same thing.
New adventure, starting from zero, new adventure. But at this one, it's like you had to be there in order to get the episode, because otherwise next week you're not going to know what happened. So it was, that was great branding on that side, but also it was just engaging. I actually recently tried to go back and rewatch them, and looking back now, obviously it's a little more difficult for me to like be engaged. But as a kid, this was the best thing. You had Demona, who was freaking awesome.
Yes.
And then like there was the daughter of Goliath and Demona that they never knew they had.
So much drama.
I know. It was so good.
So next up, talking about, things you can perhaps miss.
Yeah.
The Snookums and Meat Funny cartoon show.
I never saw that.
Yeah, this is a total, thumbs down for me. When looking at this one, I maybe have a recollection of it, but it was only around from 95, so it was a total dud.
Yeah.
And no one watched it. And yeah, this is also towards where I'm starting to get slightly older. Maybe I'm like 9 at this point.
Right.
So, not necessarily having to come home and hit these all up. Well, maybe not, because, I definitely caught every single episode of Pokemon when that came out in 98. So
right.
I just moved on to different things. Snookums and the Meat Funny cartoon show was not it. What a horrible name. Like, no, that's no. So they go back to what works, right?
Follow up some movies.
The Lion King's Timon and Pumbaa.
Hakuna Matata. What a wonderful
Timon and Pumbaa have their own spin-off series, 95 to 97.
They really tried to push Timon and Pumbaa for a long time.
I never really was into this one. I think I've maybe caught a few episodes, but it wasn't to the same level of Darkwing Duck or Goof Troop or DuckTales,
Yeah.
No. So then I'm just going to yada yada these last ones because they don't have as much meaning to me as Quack Pack.
I did see Quack Pack.
96 to 97. It's kind of, it's supposed to be like, it's the Huey, Dewey, and Louie, but older.
Yeah, I
even
did see
more
them.
Teenage. Yeah.
And then Mighty Ducks was weird because they were like superheroes.
From the hockey team.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
It's just weird.
You can't win them all. And with that's the end of the Disney Afternoon.
Yeah.
That's the end of that chapter. So some good, some duds, some kind of in between. So for me, if I'm thinking of the Disney Afternoon, I really don't think of Quack Pack. I don't think of Mighty Ducks.
No.
I think of the early years when it was really good. For sure, you're thinking DuckTales, Chip and Dale Rescue Ranger, Tailspin, Darkwing Duck, Goof Troop. Like if I had to, and Gargoyles, Aladdin.
I think Gargoyles and Aladdin, yeah.
Bonkers-ish. But yeah, they really just did a great, the Disney Afternoon it's at its best when it took existing properties and characters that we knew and loved and kind of put them in new settings, made it a little different. It's still very Disney. We love Disney. So here's just a new TV show about these characters.
Yeah. So are we going to rank these?
Since there's so many, let's just pick a top 3. You had to pick shows from the Disney Afternoon. So hard.
Oh, that is really hard. I mean, as far as like, okay, the shows that I think of when I think the Disney afternoon, as far as shows that I went home to watch, number one for me is Gargoyles. That one was and still is, of my childhood, my top favorite show. The next one was Darkwing Duck. And after that, it's going to be probably Aladdin. But Tailspin and Chippendale are kind of like right in there. So I would
do 5.
Okay. So then, yeah, those are 2. Tailspin probably next, and then Chippendale for me.
So that's so hard. It's like splitting hairs with these. They're just like, they're like children. You can't pick a favorite, but
don't make me
I think
choose.
DuckTales for sure. It kicked it off. It's one of the most popular and probably the best. Well, they're all pretty good. There's some bad ones. Okay, so DuckTales, followed by Darkwing Duck, Goof Troop, Aladdin.
Goof Troop, yeah.
And Chippendale Rescue Rangers, with an honorable mention for Gargoyles.
Okay.
So like Tailspin, here's the thing, like Tailspin is Disney Afternoon, for sure.
Yeah.
Like it's not anything other than, but I just didn't like it. Like
I get
comparatively.
It, yeah. Right.
Yeah. So that's that. So that is the Disney Afternoon. Been fun to reminisce and walk down memory lane. Good times. So if you were to watch one on Disney Plus right now, which one would you pull up?
What would I pull up right now? I think I would probably go back into some of the Tailspin stuff.
Okay.
Just because, like, now you're saying that, it makes me want to, like, go in
what
and,
did
like...
I miss?
No, I mean, the Chippendale Rescue Rangers, because after seeing the movie, there is a fondness. And actually, I went on a little family vacay, and my nephews were watching some of the old school, like the old Chippendale shows, because the Rescue Rangers, because of the movie that came out. So I'm like, I'm glad that it's giving a rebirth to those old cartoons too. But I'd still think, just because I haven't seen Tailspin in a really long time, it's kind of pulling me. So.
Yeah. Okay. I will probably do Aladdin, because Aladdin was one of those shows, like we were talking about, that it wasn't episodic. It had these characters. I mean, in a way it was, but it had reoccurring characters in some episodes. Yeah. And I was just so all about Aladdin. I loved Aladdin. And I feel like this show didn't have a ton of reruns for some reason. Maybe that's just me. Yeah. So I'd like to go back and be like, okay, was it as great as I thought?
Right.
So
if you're listening to this week as we just released this episode, or if this is like 2 years from now, whenever in time you end up listening to this, go to rotoscopers.com/257 and leave your comments. We'd like to hear what are your top 5 and maybe what is on your list of things you'd like to see. Take you back down to memory lane.
All right, guys, that's all that we have for this episode.
Until next time, we are the Rotoscopers.
Come on in, let's come on in,
I don't
let the
have
fun
the words,
begin. But... Something like, wait, oh man, we are totally just botching it.
Now we have to look it up.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to help spread the word, be sure to share the podcast with your friends on social media. Just don't forget to tag us at Rotoscopers on Instagram and use the hashtag Animation Addicts. For all the links and full show notes for this episode, go to rotoscopers.com/podcast. Now, if you still can't get enough for your animation fix, be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and visit rotoscopers.com for more animation news, reviews, and interviews. Thanks for listening.
Step right up and come on in. Here's where the fun begins. There's so much to do. Getting ready just for you. Everybody's busy bringing you a Disney afternoon. Hey, now you've heard our song. Don't it make you want to sing along? Everybody's busy bringing you a Disney afternoon. Hey, there's so much to do. Getting ready just for you. Everybody's busy bringing you a Disney afternoon. Hey, can't you feel the buzz? Don't you know you feel the buzz? Because everybody's busy, just a little dizzy, bringing you a Disney